But ladies and gentlemen, right now, out there, beyond these walls, there's communities all over New Zealand that unfortunately aren't plugged in. They're disconnected and they're suffering and they're struggling. These people are really struggling out there. But what I want to present to you today is that as agents of change, there's a note there that I caught from Lisa's earlier presentation, is that as landscape architects, we have the opportunity to really shape positive change. And I want to take the example of a recent project that has seen council undertake a number of small interventions in the way we think about our projects that have resulted in change that was well beyond anything we had ever imagined. So my time is short. I want to focus on 3 key points. And the first one is, kind of like somebody mentioned before, it's all about people. This is a person. He's got a name. His name's Dave. And immediately, I kind of like this picture because you can tell a lot about where Dave's from. He's from South Auckland. If you know Manurewa, Rewa Hard, yes, it's a tough part of town. It's, as I said, people are struggling. This particular area is Randwick Park. But they're not afraid of that. They're not shy of that. And in fact, they use what they don't have in terms of facilities, in terms of infrastructure, and they use that to band together and champion to council to stand up and say, hey, guys, you're giving all this stuff to all these other areas. What about us down here in these areas that don't have so much? One of the difficulties we have. So I have the wonderful pleasure of working in a large local government organisation, and I say that with a slight sarcastic tone because big is good, as some people might tell you, but unfortunately with big becomes the difficult challenge of really trying to stay connected with people. Now, we all know people, but I'm talking about connected with people. So the small intervention that we made with Dave about 8 years ago, because there were a number of unfortunate incidents that happened in his backyard, a large park just outside his house, that were pretty tragic, but it culminated basically in a lot of discussion, a lot of good discussion, a lot of discussion that forced us to rethink how we looked at this project, because when I say about relationships and getting to know people, a lot of where these guys come from are not the places we necessarily live in. I certainly don't live in Dave's neighbourhood, and a lot of the design team who were involved in this project don't live in Dave's neighbourhood. So what Dave has the ability to do is to connect with his community on a grassroots level that a large organisation or even a company, landscape architects from outside the area just aren't quite able to do. So our intervention was, we really worked on getting to know Dave and a number of other Dave's other friends, and by that I mean we had cup of teas at his house. We didn't set meetings up at 12 o'clock during the day, which was our work time. We set them up at 8 o'clock in the evening, which is their time that they're available. We had to rethink the way that we structured our project so that we were able to go there. And I do want to nod to the consultants who are involved at this stage, because they are in this room. This group really went beyond the extra mile to go and say, well, hey, gosh, okay, we will get there at 8 o'clock, or we will get there on a Saturday. Or yes, we will go and meet that guy because it's his birthday, but it's a great chance to get to know these people. So what I'm saying here is taking that opportunity to really know people. It's difficult to do, but it made such a huge difference because we built that trust, we built that relationship. Community intelligence. So I talked about Dave's got a finger on the pulse at a grassroots level that we simply can't understand. And a lot of the thinking and engagement with that community is done with the people like Dave who are out there in our communities. And I just want to flick through. This is some of the work, just briefly, images that they started to put together themselves. So this is about 8 years ago, which is pretty cool. I won't get stuck too much into the details. Not particularly refined. But this bottom section is some of the images that once the design team came along and they kind of said, well, no, hey, that's not working for us. Let's start working together. This is some of the images that came out of that more collaborative process. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, it's certainly more refined, but in context, in intention, in ultimately a final outcome, they're really similar, which is really cool. Quite often, and I know this because I speak from a personal point of view, landscape architects, well, we're the design team. We know what's good for you here. We're working on this policy, or we've got this new gadget going on, or what you need is one of these. Whereas, let's just dial that back a little bit. Sometimes let's drop the acronyms, let's drop the technicality. Let's just get to know these people and work through a process together. Because again, what that ultimately built was trust. Trust to the point where everyone has a leadership role. It was a bit of a motto that we had with this group about 8 years ago. And that wasn't just with Dave. There was a whole number of Dave's mates involved as well. Everyone has a leadership role. And what this was about was building that trust, building a good working relationship. It was ultimately about building capacity for this community. So like I started with, we don't live in this community personally. And it was traditionally the type of place that if you put in a swing, a small playground, or maybe a picnic table, it got kicked in the next day, it got smashed. Because it hadn't been put in there with the community, if you know what I'm saying. So through this process now, 8 years on, what was a gang hangout, pretty dangerous kind of place. You certainly wouldn't go there by yourself. It was rough. Is a place where now the council has completely shifted its mindset, and the community basically manage the park, which is a big thing for council to get over. Well, you can't do that. That doesn't fit with policy. Or how are you going to manage health and safety? Or what is their capacity to be able to deliver on what they say? So what started out as a small garden, they approached us and they said, hey, we've got a few people in our community. They're in between the dole and getting a real job. They're stuck. How can we help them? We gave them a small garden to look after, which led into a bigger garden, which then led into them negotiating a subcontract with the Southern Regional Auckland Council main contractors to actually get on the mowers and start mowing the grass and start maintaining these areas and doing the weed spraying. All these training opportunities that were able to be stepping stones for that community, to where now just recently they opened a community centre that they manage themselves. So ultimately council has invested a heck of a lot of money, approximately $7 million into this project, which we've said, here you go, you guys run for it. That wouldn't have happened 8 years ago from the start, and it was never originally envisaged, but today they're running incredibly successfully, and it was about building capacity and ultimately a better connected community. Thank you.